So what is object-oriented programming? In the simplest terms, it's a way of writing code. It's an approach to build reusable software or reusable code. You can easily move almost each module from the application to another part. For example, if you write a code that connects your application to the database, you can easily grab that and put it in another application, and it's still reusable. Or for example, some validation codes. It's very common to validate users' input in forms. You can just write some validation class and validation functions that we get into it later. Grab that and just plug it to your another application, and it still works. In a well-written object-oriented code, you should be able to grab the code and simply use it in another system. Now, I'm not going to get too technical here. I just wanted to understand the concepts. It's very important to understand why we are even moving to object-oriented programming. Now, well-written object-oriented code is not rigid. By rigid, I mean it's not hard to change. It's very simple to change the code. Okay, this is supposed to be object-oriented, but it's not. This is a product of misunderstanding object-oriented and mixing with procedural. As you can see, this piece of code is supposed to send an email campaign out. It's doing a lot of things. It's doing something with users' input. It does some validation, it does some redirection, it does some database queries, and there's some raw queries in here. And as you can see, look, there's views in here, there's HTML5, there's math in here. This is such a mess. Why is it a mess? Because this code is rigid. It's very difficult to change. If you want to change anything about this, if you want to change anything about how the HTML works, this is style, for example, everything has to stop, and you cannot test it because everything is in one place. So the software may look simple. Maybe it's just one file that does everything, but that one file does everything, and everything is really tied together. In a well-written object-oriented code, you can put each of these sections, for example, these queries, or this SQL, or these views, you drag everything, just delete them from there, and put them somewhere else in another module, and you only change that module when you want to. The other thing is, this is fragile code, as you can see. Changing one section is going to affect everything else. If you break something in here, everything is going to break together. As in object-oriented, things don't break. If you break some part, only that section is broken, and the rest of the system works by itself. And in other words, the system is very independent from each section. So your modules are independent from each other. Imagine you want to fix your car's window or car's stereo system, and the gearbox breaks, stops working. You know, it's silly, but that's how a lot of bad written code like this. A well-written object-oriented code is mobile. It can easily be extracted and used in another system. Just like I said above, in the database system or a validation system can easily be used in another application as well. And it's very simple to maintain and change a well-written object-oriented code, because you can find everything you want very easily. You might have a lot more files, but it's all structured. You know exactly where to find which file. I'm going to give you examples later, but for now, just try to understand why we are going to get there. Object-oriented programming is all about separation. It's about the independence of each module. It's critical to understand. One of the main goals is code independence. Even though, as I said, the system gets larger number of files, it may look a bit more complex, but it will have all the qualities that I mentioned above. You can work on each section, and another developer can work on another section, and you don't clash with each other. At the same time, you can develop different part of application. As in codes that I showed you on the other screen, you cannot do such a thing. Each module is completely independent. I've been writing code for I think 5 years now, and I had a very hard time converting from procedural to object-oriented. And the main reason it changed is because my code started to look like this. I couldn't work with any other developer. Everything was coupled together. Everything was such a mess like this. And I put this picture here because it gives you a good visual idea of the difference between these two paradigms. Once you change to object-oriented, this code will look like this, which is very beautiful. As you can see, you can follow every cable. It's just like everything is nicely organized. You can follow each cable where it's going, exactly like object-oriented code. So if you're coming from a procedural background, like a lot of developers, and if you are self-taught, you're trying to learn these things yourself, take your time, watch this video a few times, and try to understand why we do this. The main reason that we do is code reusability, code independence, and everything should be separate. We don't really focus on how simple is the architecture of system should be, because the architecture gets a bit more difficult, but it's very well organized. For example, with Zen Engine, Zen Framework, not Zen Engine, Zen Framework, or Magento e-commerce, they come with thousands of files, but it's very easy to follow. It's very simple to follow. So basically, these are the reasons that we do object-oriented programming. The code is reusable. The code is maintainable. You can easily change it. You can just plug and play. You can. It's not rigid. It's not fragile. And basically, the code is much easier.